In today's episode, once again, we speak to the amazing Tyler Mount. Tyler is an industry-leading branding and digital strategy expert. He has served as a branding and business consultant, digital marketer, and social strategist to nearly 1,000 clients spanning 14 countries worldwide. And in today's episode, we speak to Tyler about the power of personal brand and digital ecosystem. Let's find out. Welcome, welcome. This is Gull, your money mindset expert. And today, once again, I'm so excited. We have the amazing, the wonderful Tyler Mount. Welcome, Tyler.
Thanks for having me again. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us again, Tyler. We had such a fantastic conversation on Friday, so we have to have you back. Tyler, everyone has heard how wonderful you are in the intro, but please, in your own words, tell everybody what it is that you do.
I am the CEO and founder of Henry Street Creative, which is the digital marketing agency here in New York City. And I also am the founder of a personal brand consultancy, which is dedicated to fostering the brands and building the empires of Fortune 100, Fortune 500, and some of the most prolific leaders here in the United States.
Wonderful. And so this lays in perfectly because today we're talking about the power of personal brand and your digital ecosystem. Now, before we talk about it, let's define it. So Tyler, define for us what you mean by personal brand and digital ecosystem.
Of course. So everyone on earth is a person. That might seem crazy, but let's start there. Every person is a person.
Yeah.
And consequently, we have an unprecedented ability to market us as humans, market us as companies in and of itself. I understand that 99.9% of people on earth will not have one job in their life. Okay. They will have a collection, a multitude of jobs, whether they work for someone else, whether they own their own company. But the goal is our job is to raise our own brand's equity. And what I mean by that is by me being in the public eye, me serving as a thought leader, me showcasing who I am and what I do to the best of my ability makes me more valuable. Does it make me smarter? Not saying that. Does it make me better than someone else? Certainly not. But it certainly allows consumers and potential clients and potential customers to have a vote of confidence when they try to work with me. So the number one goal that I talk to a lot of people about is personal brand. How do we elevate how people perceive you so that not only your current position, job, or company is great, but the legacy of your job or your companies are great as well?
Brilliant. Okay, so I definitely agree with you. We all have a personal brand, and I love I love when you read books on selling, they talk about the fact that you're selling yourself, your ideas all the time. So that ties in beautifully with this. Doesn't matter, you could be the executive or you could be starting out in your professional career. You could be a mother. It doesn't matter who you are. Every single individual has a personal brand in terms of how they look, how they dress, how they behave, how they socially interact. It all becomes part of your brand. And depending on what you do, it may be very small and known to some people, or large, depending on how much of an audience you are, if you're an influencer or if you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 or 100 companies, etc. That is irrespective. That depends on how many people are aware of your brand. But every single individual has a brand. So I'm really, really glad we talked about that. And the second one, which is important, is digital ecosystem. Now, I understand what you mean by that because I have that. I have, obviously, I'm on YouTube and all the social platforms and God knows what else I have, and my own personal website. But let's define that. And I know the answer to this, but I want you to explain in your words, why is it important that we pay attention to our digital ecosystem now more than, say, 10 years ago? Because 10 years ago, obviously, most of the social platforms didn't exist. They weren't as big, as relevant. But nevertheless, somebody can say, well, why is it important for me to think about my digital ecosystem? I'm okay. X, Y, Z, I do this job or whatever I have. What difference does it make if I do or don't have an ecosystem? And what is a digital ecosystem?
Absolutely. So the digital ecosystem is defined as anything online that speaks about you.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, the goal here is for you to control that narrative. I can put anything on the internet speaking about me. And so I want to do that to ensure that when customers or consumers find me online, I control the narrative. I really teach this idea that user perception is truth. Now, that's huge. That's like, in my opinion, the golden rule of marketing. User perception is truth. I didn't say factually accurate. I said that if a customer perceives you to be one way, then it is, right? And what's incredible is we have the ability to control that narrative. It happens every single day before we work with a service vendor, before we go to a restaurant, before we fly on a certain airline, before we go to a vacation destination. What do? We look at the brands and the personal brands of these organizations.
Yeah.
And we have all not gone to a restaurant because the food didn't look good online. But guess what? We have no idea for that to be true at all. We've also been to restaurants that look good online and that are utter garbage, right? It really is about how can we control that narrative. We know, statistically speaking, that it takes upwards of 7 positive touch points for a customer to transact with you. And I use the word transact here loosely. Listening to your podcast is a conversion or a transaction, right? It only takes one negative interaction or neutral interaction for them not to be interested. So if I hear about GoalCon, I have to meet this fantastic woman who is doing all of these great things in entrepreneurship. I need to go on her podcast. And then I Google you and nothing exists. I'm not saying you're not a good provider. I'm not saying you're not good at what you do. I'm not saying you're not successful. You could be the richest person on earth. But the reality is there will be pause in any consumer who will say, is this person who she says she is?
Yeah.
And that's the key here. We have the key to this ecosystem. It's just up to us to actually finesse it and create it and define it.
I love that. I think because the reason why I'm so familiar with it, because my background is I came from the coaching industry and I still am coaching, I suppose on a smaller scale in these days, but still one of the biggest things that I learned from the business side of it was building your brand authority, building your authority, which comes with a book. And I've the best-selling book and I've got the podcast and I've got the testimonials and whatever or not. And so all of these things combined have now built my brand authority. And in the process, I've built my digital ecosystem, as you would say. So I am on most platforms, actually probably all of them. I have a good, because I've been doing podcasts for 3 years. I'm on YouTube for, God knows how many hundreds of videos on YouTube as well now. And obviously on the podcast through, because of my podcast as well, everywhere. So if you go and search Gull, even though it's, funny enough, it's a very, very common name, most of the time, especially in the UK and Europe, my name will turn up, even though Gull is extremely common. It's actually a male name as well, by the way. So it's typically Afghani male name. So there are some amazing people with the same name. When I first started research Gull Khan, they would show up. One of being a major producer in Bollywood, by the way. So wow. she would turn up. But I've overtaken her. So now when you search Gull, my Facebook profile, my YouTube channels, my podcast, my things come up on the first 2-3 through pages, and then afterwards everybody else follows. And it's the process because I've actively been building my digital currency compared to these individuals. They just let byproducts happen. And I wasn't intending on building it. I was just trying to build authority and putting all this content out. And it resulted in Google recognizing me as an authority, but that indirectly has now helped my digital ecosystem. Now, that's just explained to people as a live example how this helped me as an individual. And I was surprised that even LinkedIn as well, other places, a lot of the people, so even my other businesses, when people go and we connect with me, or we sort of meet at any of these networking events, or they become aware of me through a business transaction of one or some sort, they do come and search on me. And because I'm so well known and I come up, they are like, oh, she does this, oh, she does that. So they do my background research more than I can because I'm so fully aware. But it also allows me to build authority. They come already being sold on what I have to sell them. If they want to work with me, they know they're going to work with me. They either have the money or they don't have the money to work with me if it's a coaching client. If it's non-coaching client, they're already know like, oh, she's this and whatever. I don't have to convince anybody that I'm genuine, I'm real, and I am who I am, and that I have this business or I'm doing this, whatever. It's that this digital ecosystem allows me to have that authority for them to come to me already sold and who I am. Does that make sense? And I've learned, I've learned that the hard way that that's probably the side effect of it. That's the best. But it can work in reverse too. If you have negative things said about you, people do have those comments as well. They have reservations of working with you in whatever capacity, maybe not in coaching, but even in the capacity, they would not want to work with you. So you have to take care of your digital currency, as they make sure that digital currency is positive, not negative. Now, the question I have for you is, how does an individual who is not in the public eye, who's not a public figure, who doesn't have a podcast, who's not on, doesn't have a YouTube channel, but it's just a normal so-called person, for example, manager in a company, how does he or she build their digital ecosystem, and how relevant is that?
So it's incredibly relevant, and it's really no different than how you built your personal brand or I built mine. You just happen to do something that's maybe a little bit more public, right? And so keep in mind, you're a manager at a corporate bank, right? Let's just talk about as rudimentary, okay? You obviously within your legal jurisdiction and, within the confines of compliance and all of those things, ensuring that you have a strong LinkedIn presence and you're updating that profile 2 to 3 times a week with thought leadership content. You have a website that obviously doesn't speak about your employer, but about your financial prowess. Maybe you have a digital newsletter where you give out financial advice within the confines of compliance to people and grow a newsletter there. From there, you can have a YouTube series. You can really build this brand. And why is this important? Okay, because whenever you're done with job A and the next bank, whatever bank that is, wants to hire you, you're going to be more hireable and more sought after because you have that personal brand. There is no exception to this rule. You are not the exception. It really is about building that equity for yourself so that you're a more valuable product to your next employer. Similarly to you, Gull, you bring up such an incredible point, right? The book validates you. The YouTube channel validates you. And what I want to stress here is, because you have a book, because you have a podcast, does that make you better than someone else? Not necessarily.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is key here is you're perceived to be better because of it. Similarly, if you didn't have any of that, does that mean you're a bad coach or a host? Absolutely not. It is just perceived that way. So if we have this ability, you and myself and everyone listening, to elevate our status in the digital ecosystem and to potential customers and future employers or collaborators, then it's up to us in order to take that leap.
100%. I think this is something that I was surprised at. I shouldn't be, but I suppose because I lived in this cocoon of online space and the coaching industry and whatever, I didn't realize how relevant this was even outside in the normal domains as well, because it started off having a more relevant note, I suppose, in the coaching sector because it was booming at the time. And now that the coaching industry is now maturing as well, the strategies and things you've learned from there are now applicable across the board, because now I'm not just a coach. I do have other businesses. And when people from other businesses look to do research on my name, I'm everywhere. So they can say, so when I tell them I do X, Y, and Z, I don't have to prove or sound, so it can sound like I'm being boastful. I'm not. I just say I'm doing X, Y, and Z. It sounds quite impressive, but it's just my CV. It is. But then I don't have to be the boastful one. I can just say I do and have this, and they can come do research on me, and then the Google will tell them who I am, and that's Google doing my work for me. But it enables people to trust me more, and I found that that fact really interesting. So when I speak to people in a complete different sector, so my professional training is as a lawyer, so I'm working in a complete different manufacturing sector now in engineering. When I'm speaking to engineers, they are still more receptive to what I have to say, and they believe what I have to say, because I'm always speaking the truth, and I think being authentic and real, it comes across anyway. But I think even more so now, they understand, because of their perceived, as you say, perceived value, that I'm all over the place, and I talk about certain things, so I must be honest. I am honest, but that's there's additional perceived value from their point. She must be honest. So when I give them a comment, or if I speak to them, they listen to me, even though it may not be what they want to hear. So those
Correct.
harsh truths are more easily acceptable. I'm not sure if they're happy to hear it, but they still accept it. And they don't think they're being there, or I'm lying, or anything else, or I'm trying to manipulate them, which I'm not. But I find that really helpful. So even in a different sector, my podcast has got nothing to do with engineering. It's all about mindset and money and so forth. Yet my name and my authority from that helps me in other sectors. That's the point I'm making. That it just the perceived value, as you mentioned earlier, that goes a long way to support you in your career and helping people to build those relationships with you professionally. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I could not agree more. It's, just to double down, if you or I tomorrow, your Google and your YouTube and your book and all of those things online were to disappear, would that make you any less important as a coach? No.
No.
Understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Your methodology wouldn't change, your experience wouldn't change, but consumers or potential customers' perception of you would,
Yes.
right? And that's the key here. And this should be really, really good news for everyone listening. Not once have you or I said you have to be the richest, the best, the most successful, the most experienced, having done this the longest, unbeatable, X, Y, and Z. No, that's not the conversation at all. That would be physically impossible. Instead, the conversation surrounds how do we set up our ecosystem to give that additional vote of confidence with consumers? And that's through, like you said, a personal website, strong social that is consistently updated with value add, engageable content that showcases you in the best way.
Lovely. I want to add to this point that this is why every single individual starting out their career, or is in the middle of the career, or is transfer, maybe they're in transition, what's the word? I'm transitionary stage and moving from one career and moving to another, maybe coming from a 9 to 5 and to becoming an entrepreneur, and I have a side hustle currently, and I'm looking to build on that, and are looking to build more wealth, which I personally believe you can't do in a job anyway. You have to do it if you want to hit one true wealth. It has to come in some form of a business. But either way, it's more important for you to recognize who you are and showcase that in the best light possible online. And I loved what you said. Take ownership of that yourself, because if you don't, then you're leaving it up to Google to find whatever's online for you. And that may not be the best, and it may not show you in the best light. Whereas if you take ownership of that and put in and I know a lot of people say, oh, I avoid Facebook and I don't like social media. But that's the necessary evil, I believe, that you need to have. You can keep your information basic and keep as much as private as possible, but there is an element of sacrifice that you need to do. And that's my next question. What about those people who don't want to be online? I know that I know this one particular person who shared this with me, that only he is online, and anybody, his wife, his kids, and everybody else, they are not online. If they go online, they use his email address and his name and his details. He's just really careful for them not to be online at all and not share any personal details at all. So how do we deal with this, the fear that the online, the online security, or the, being hacked, or your images being stolen? How do we deal with that kind of threat that's present in the online space at the moment?
Yeah, look, I would be lying if I said there is no risk. Okay. We live in a world of risk, but we're here to mitigate risk and to really try to consolidate risk versus reward. Okay. If you do not want to be on social, if you do not want to be online, and then a step beyond that, refuse to be, okay, with all due respect, you probably can't or shouldn't have a company. And I mean that truthfully, especially if you're starting today, because that is how everyone does business. Okay. And it's so incredibly important. I hear client after client, well, I'm not on social and I'm still doing well. And I'm not
I
arguing
hear
that.
that. I hear that all
You
the
know,
time, and
you
especially
can,
in the engineering sector, they're not even on LinkedIn. Forget Facebook and other things. They're not even on LinkedIn.
they're like, I've been fine. And I'm
Yeah.
like, great. I have no doubt. I'm not saying that you're homeless if you're not on social. What I'm saying is you don't truly understand the white space in your ecosystem that leads and customers are dropping because of. For example, this is a real scenario from last week. Okay. I represent a massive, massive vacation home development here in the United States. They are looking for a specific real estate team in order to help sell this property. The total contract value that this real estate team would get would be upwards of $15 million. We're talking about a considerable, life-changing, biggest deal in the history of their career transaction. Okay. I went to my personal network, I got a few referrals, and I sent them to this developer. And the developer, regardless of how highly they came recommended or their track record or production, literally replied to the email and said, I couldn't put this in front of the owner. Their social is outdated and looks bad. Do you realize what that means? That woman is going home saying, well, I'm not on social and it's been fine. I'm the number one producer in this market. What she didn't tell her family, because she doesn't know, is that she lost out on a $15 million after-tax check, right? Because her ecosystem isn't updated. And so we live in a world that if you want to own a business, we have to adhere to how people do business. And they find you online, and 9 times out of 10, they transact online. And if you can't be online and you don't want to be online and take that risk to be online, I get it. You just shouldn't own your own company that transacts online. So ultimately, that's my hard truth. We don't have to be overly personal. I don't need photos of your children. I don't need your home address. I don't need your cell phone number. But I do need us to very, specifically and thoughtfully curate this narrative for you and the company.
I completely agree. I think there's a balance. And I think as the online space has changed as well. So I give away my age now. But because I come from the dinosaur age, when we didn't, we grew up without the internet. I mean, the internet was obviously around when I was born, but it wasn't as accessible. And then broadband came in when I was probably a teenager or something like that. That's when the internet really came through and broadband happened and so forth. But still, it wasn't as accessible, and it wasn't as important, and didn't play as a vital role in life. And the Facebook only became, I think from 2007, 2008 onwards, when everybody had a Facebook account and so forth. And then all the other social platforms just, exploded from thereafter. It was a lot safer. So I remember I used to put on my kids' pictures and personal things, and I've been here, and I've done this, and I've done that. And it used to be really, really, my whole life was shared on Facebook because that was my favorite platform. And then Instagram came up, and then Instagram started, and so forth. Over the years, the social media has taken a nasty turn as well.
Of
There's
course.
a lot of trolling, and there's a lot of different things that happen. And if you are in the online space, you have to develop thick skin. You get a lot of negative comments. I still do, even YouTube videos. Even though I don't sell anything, as far as with the podcast and the beyond my podcast, either audio or video, I don't sell anything. I'm not even an affiliate for most things. It's just pure content. Yet we get lots of odd comments, which is normal, by the way, because everybody does.
Correct.
You have to develop thick skin. And you have to develop mindfulness because of there's an element of freedom of speech, but you have to be careful of mindful of what you say as well. This wasn't the case earlier. It's become as the social media platforms have become more matured and more sophisticated, you have to be more careful. So there is an element of understanding and growing with the platforms and not sharing your personal data, because before it was fine, now it's not. With the rise of AI, the other threats have come into being. I get that. So that's the downside, the dark side of social media. But you can't, it's like throwing the baby out with the bathtub, with bathwater. You can't do that. You just need to reduce the risk by limiting the information you put on the social media platforms, which is I don't share any pictures of my kids. I don't share any details of my kids or what school they go to. That's completely done. That's not shared at all. even the names or whatever are not mentioned at all if I can help it now. But I still share my stuff, which is, you know, my thoughts, my ideas, my content about the business and the company, etc., which has to be available, and it all becomes part of the ecosystem. So the point I'm making is I do accept this true danger to social media, the amount of social media we're exposed to as well, along with the fact that with the rise of AI, it's going to make it even more dangerous. I do understand and do accept that. But that's a risk you have to take, because without it, I agree that even when I'm looking at something small, like, you know, if a movie's come out, what's their review? Even if I want to watch a Netflix series, and, you know, the new one, what's people's thoughts on it? I go and do a review on it, do a review check on it. If I want to go to a restaurant, if I want to go to here, if I want to go there, even on delivery or whatever, you're always checking for other people's ideas and thoughts on it. And how is that particular thing, that scene, that movie, that restaurant, that, you know, that particular, I don't know, location, what's the reviews about it, the hotel itself. And therefore, we can't get away from it. So it's that balance, making sure that we are safe and being online safe and being educated in that, at the same time allowing ourselves to be exposed to people, because if we're not, people will reject. If I see something, even a book, if I see 0 reviews on it and nobody's read it before, I leave it. I'll wait for until some reviews come.
Correct.
Simple
Does
as
that mean it's a bad book? No, it's your
Yeah.
perception,
Yeah.
right? And that's the key here. We're not saying that if you are not on social, you're a bad provider. We're saying that people will not know you're good, right? And that's the key. I can't tell you the amount of times I've audited someone's LinkedIn, let's say, and they're a fantastic provider and they're making good money, but it says, I swear to you, they're a manager at a grocery store because they haven't updated it in 12 years. Okay, does that mean you're a bad provider today? No, but if I am looking, let's say, for a real estate agent and I'm online and it says you're a grocery store manager, I would imagine you're not the best real estate agent. Is that true? No, but that's my perception and I'm not calling you.
Yeah.
And the thing that's important to remember here, Gull, is the fact that specifically Instagram and specifically LinkedIn are highly indexable on Google, meaning that if you are there and don't show up properly and show up with your, you know, best face forward, then it's a massive, massive disservice to your company. 9 times out of 10, Instagram and LinkedIn are showing up in the first 5 links when you Google your first and last name if you don't have a common name. Then your first and last name and your city, your first and last name and your position or your job, game over, right? So that's why leveraging these tools are really important, because even if you say, I'm not going to update it, they still exist, right? And they still give a perception to a certain customer.
I think it looks even worse when you don't exist. If they do a Google search and you don't exist, but that's odd. They're not on socials.
Very strange, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even if you're the best, it's still going to give that customer pause to be like, wait, is Gull who she says she is? Is Tyler really as good as he claims to be, or so and so claims he is? Right? That's what's important. It doesn't matter that your friend recommended you to me. It's the fact that your friend recommended you to me. So you need to get online and confirm what your friend said is true.
Yeah.
Right. And if I don't have anything, then that's really detrimental.
Yeah. I think that's become the key theme from today's episode. You have to understand the way the world works, and being online and having an online presence and your online currency, like you're calling it, there is a currency to it. You have to have your digital, as you call it, digital ecosystem in correct working order, with the safety parameters, I suppose, attached on both sides, making sure you don't overly share your personal information on there. But you need to be present and you need to be updating the socials regularly, especially I think suppose LinkedIn and maybe Facebook or Instagram as well, or maybe Instagram, LinkedIn, and maybe Facebook as well, depending on what platforms are more in use. But it's important to have the understanding and the awareness. Now, whilst we wrap up this episode, what do you think is the best way for someone to, if they haven't got a digital, presence, or if they have a very limited digital presence because they haven't updated it, or they're only on LinkedIn and they're not a part of any other platforms? What do you think they should start, and should they be on all the platforms? What's your recommendation? And if they are new, if they're like, there's somebody who's generation, I don't know, baby boomers or stroke Generation X. By the way, Generation X were born in 1965, and I'm one of them. So right at the end, but still,
Yeah.
still part of
Yeah.
that one. So if they're from that generation where they're like, well, do I need to be on there? No, I'm not really sure. And then now think, oh, Tyler said it, Gull said it, maybe I should be on there. What would you recommend to do to be as a bare minimum?
Yeah, I always believe, unlike a lot of coaches potentially, I believe that limitations are that which free us. And what I mean by that is whenever we go to like like a bowling alley, we put the bumpers up on the side to limit where the ball can go and we can hit a strike. Okay.
Right.
And so the idea that you need to be everywhere all at once today is a misnomer. It's overwhelming. It's going to defeat the purpose. Choose one platform, choose two platforms. And maybe that's Facebook and Instagram because they're maybe the easiest to you or they're the most common, right? Start there. Really develop what that looks like, your voice and tone here, and make a commitment to update it, post once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, right? That's really, really important. But the biggest thing I would say is whenever we start, you have to take a really, really blunt and honest hard look at the way other people perceive you. You can't think for a second, oh, I know my value. Of course you do. I hope you do. You are valuable. But it's, do strangers understand your value from what they see online? So the number one thing, the very first thing I do with any new client is I open an incognito browser on Google. Why? Because we can't have you searching for yourself because the results are going to be skewed.
Yeah.
Open a new incognito browser. Type in your first and last name. If your first and last name is like John Smith, okay, do John Smith real estate, John Smith janitor, John Smith plumber, whatever it is you do, and see what comes up, right? And then click all 10 of those first links and say, okay, my Yelp.com profile is outdated and doesn't have a photo and has an outdated phone number. My Facebook hasn't been updated in 18 months. My Instagram has 3 photos from 2014. My website has my old logo on it and it was designed in 2004. What does this say to consumers? Well, it says you're not a real provider. Maybe you're out of business. You haven't updated anything. And if you are in business, you're certainly not serious and you're not an elevated company. So the good news about that is if you're honest with yourself, if you take a look and say, would I hire this plumber, this real estate agent, this hotel company? And the answer is probably not. The control is in your hands. Literally spend an hour, spend 2 hours getting that Yelp profile updated and posting some new content on Instagram, and make sure your Facebook is updated and add your newest job position on LinkedIn. This isn't rocket science, and it doesn't take an expert 40 hours a week in order to do it for you. Just take the power in your own hands after taking a real hard look at the ecosystem as it sits today.
I think that's brilliant advice. Thank you so much for that. Tyler, so tell us, how can we connect with you? Where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on all of my social platforms because I practice what I preach. I'm everywhere at Tyler G Mount. And of course, if you want to find out more about my consultancy and how I can help you grow your empire, you can visit Tyler G Mount. That's TYLERGMOUNT.com.
Wonderful. So if you are listening to us on the podcast, the links for Tyler would be in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, then down below in the description section, we'll have the links for Tyler. Do check him out and see how he can help support you and help you to have a better online presence. Well, thank you so much, Tyler, for being such an amazing guest. We had a fantastic conversation and we've learned so much. I definitely have. Thank you for being such an amazing guest.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you for listening to me and Tyler today on Money Talkies. I will be back with another amazing guest, finding out how you and I can build a better business. Until the next time we meet, this is Gull signing off. Take care and bye for now.